those of you who know, I was on retreat last week, and it's always, retreats are, it's always, I always appreciate them, and especially in this I went back to a retreat place I hadn't been to in a while, but I enjoyed it immensely. When you're gathering together with, 24 people you've never met, you don't know, and the only thing you know about them is that they're brother priests. There's like a little unspoken intimacy there, like a bond, and it's not awkward. Especially when you're spending the whole week in silence with each other, praying with each other, eating, sharing meals with each other, especially in silence, not talking, and we're all coming with different struggles, with different blessings, bringing different things before the Lord that week to reflect on. It's beautiful, and it was making me think a lot of my seminary days and a lot of the guys I studied with, and I appreciated it because as a guy like me, growing up in a kind of a podunk area of northern Maine, I didn't get to meet a lot of people from other places. And so it was a great opportunity. There was a lot of guys from different parts of the world that were there at seminary. So a couple of my classmates were right off the plane from the Philippines, and I got to really appreciate the Filipino culture and community, the food. Very familiar. It was like different, but very similar to how I grew up. It's a kind of food where if a restaurant opened up with that kind of food, I wouldn't trust it. It's got to be home cooked. It's got to be cooked by some like mother of like 10 kids who've and all that love that she's poured into her children, poured into her food. It's like that. I think of my grandmother, and the same thing with a lot of these titas, the aunties that took in a lot of the Filipino seminarians and took me in too. I was their token American. So I appreciated the inclusion. One of my favorite people, though, that I got to meet was this gentleman who's now a priest of the Archdiocese of Baltimore, but his name was Francis Ouma, who was from Uganda. One of the most joyful men you've ever met. If you think and that's coming. If you think I'm a joyful optimist, he puts me to shame. It's like one of his favorite lines. He would always. I remember him saying, was like, "Oh, this is the best." It's like, Francis, you just said that about this before. It's like, yeah, but right when he said it in that particular moment, you believed him, right? This is for him in that particular whatever it was, whether it was this Fanta he was drinking or this new American dish he was discovering. It's like, oh, this is the best. You believe him. You're filled with that hope and that joy that he's experiencing. Oh gosh, and as we're coming into this coming week with Halloween on the verge, I remember the first Halloween. So he was still learning about American culture and some of the different stuff. So we had a Halloween party in the seminary, and what he did as he was trying to put out a costume, be scary, stuff like that. So this is what he did. So party shows up, and in walks in, and for the whole night, no one knew who this was. Keep that in mind in context. In walks in this 6'4" starch white bunny who proceeds to say nothing the entire night, but just walk around the room interacting with us. Oh, he got terror down right. He got such a kick out of that. But as I got to know him over the years at our time in study, there was a lot of depth stories coming from his home. He's seen a lot, he experienced a lot, and it didn't suck his joy away. When he entered seminary when he was in high school, he was probably about 14, 15 years old when he entered. They had high school seminary over there. And I don't know if you know about that part of the world. There's been this kind of this rebel force that's been in that area since probably the late 80s, run by this crazy guy who believed God spoke to him, and in order to increase the army, they would kidnap children, young boys, young girls, to brainwash them to become soldiers for their army. And on one evening, while they were sound asleep in the seminary, they came in. They made their way into the seminary and kidnapped about 30 of his fellow seminarians. You know, he was spared. He was in a different wing that didn't make it to. So up to this day, he says they know what happened to about 90% of those who were taken, whether they were killed, freed, or and worse. But there's still a few they don't know about. Remember, he was telling me one other story. He was part of his work. He was part of a group that was escorting this group of nuns to this parish, this mission parish in South Sudan, just over the border from Uganda. And as they're driving there with their vehicle, they're on the lookout for different things. And they see this figure low to the ground in the distance. Like, is that some type of animal? It's like moving slowly, and like, what the heck is this? And as they get closer, they come to realize it's this woman. It's this woman low to the ground. They realize she's got no legs, and she's just slowly crawling in this heat, in the desert, slowly moving moving with her hands, crawling forward, slowly but surely. Well, they come up to her, and they start engaging her in conversation, and come to realize she said she was on her way to Mass. She's something, she didn't have anyone that could take her or would bring her, so she's been doing this for months, every Sunday, just crawling this way, 2 miles, one way from her house to the church and back. And she had gone about a mile. She had another mile to go to where the church was, the church they were on their way to. And even blew their mind even more as they got into. She was talking about like she was anticipating, longing to receive the Eucharist. She come to find out she wasn't even Catholic yet. She kind of discovered the faith several months earlier, and had been going, discovering, learning on her own. And it's just having that dedication. And as I'm listening to this, as I'm thinking back on the story he told, it's like the thing that remarks is that she was not concerned with a lot of the externalities that sometimes come. She wasn't asking, which priest is going to be there? Am I going to understand him? How's the music going to be? Am I going to agree with the priest? He's going to say something. Is he going to say anything difficult to challenge me? Who else is going to? Are people going to judge me? There's a lot of things that that was not her concern. She had discovered something extraordinary to her. She encountered Christ, and especially Christ in the Eucharist, Christ in the Mass, and that's where she wanted to go. And she wouldn't let anything stop her or hold her back. I get concerned. There's times I get concerned these days. We have in our diocese, we're reliant on a lot of our missionary priests. Or at this point, we're probably about they make up the majority of the priests in our parishes in our diocese now. And there's a lot of, sometimes I hear people struggle, people talking back and forth, talking about how they don't understand. Sometimes they don't understand, and it prevents them from going. Although they'll shop around a little bit because they won't go to them for confession or other little things of that nature. But it's like they're priests of God, come all this way to bring the sacraments, to bring Christ to us in the Mass? What is it that what are some of these externalities that challenge us? Because we have these. And I'm reflecting on this in light of this comparison we have in the gospel today. These two figures. You got this one guy who's all about the externalities, right? There's this Pharisee's prayer comes forward. On paper, he looks the part, right? He looks like the pious religious one. He's doing everything right, and he's telling you he is. Not only is he telling everyone else, he's telling God, hey, God, look what you see what I've done? Look what see. It could be worse. I could be like this guy. Thank goodness I'm not like the rest of humanity. I don't even think he's praying to God. It says it right. It's like he's praying to himself. He's become God in his own mind. Right? Comparing himself to others, the externalities. And then you have this tax collector who just, he's trying very hard not to be seen, hidden, kind of coming in. He knows himself. He knows who he is. He knows how people see him. And he's just kind of no expectation. Doesn't even feel worthy to lift his eyes to heaven. And all he says is this very earnest and honest prayer. Oh God, be merciful to me, a sinner. That's it, 7 words. And Jesus tells us this man went home justified, not the other. Justified meaning leaving in right relationship. So confronted with this image, with these stories, how is the Lord challenging us as we seek to come into relationship with him, as we approach him into this Mass, in our relationship with him in life? How do we approach him? How do we engage him? Do we allow him to challenge us? Do we allow him to be the guiding post? The one that propels us forward? Do we come to this moment in the Mass and tell him, how things should be in our lives? Or do we come simply seeking to be in a humble state, putting him first in this moment? Lord, you are the creator of the universe. You know me more than I know myself. I just want to give you my whole attention, everything that I have, everything that I'm able to offer in this moment. My full attention. Here's my gift. Regardless of all the other externalities. See, the book of Sirach helps us understand, this even more. He says, the prayer of the lowly pierces the clouds. It does not rest until it reaches its goal. God listens to the one who comes with humility, not pride. Because you see, pride builds walls around the heart. Humility opens the door for grace to come in. And so the Pharisee's prayer never left the temple because it never left himself. The tax collector's prayer reached heaven because it came from a heart open to mercy. I remember hearing recently, trying to think when it was, but Pope Leo said something very beautiful surrounding this kind of prayer. He said, Jesus teaches us not to be afraid to cry out as long as it is sincere, humble, addressed to the Father. A cry is never pointless if it is born of love. And that's what the tax collector did. He cried out. Not with eloquence, not with long words, but with love and honesty. He knew who he was, and he trusted that God's mercy was bigger than his sin. In our second reading, St. Paul is at the end of his journey. He says, I have fought the good fight, I have finished the race, I have kept the faith. But he doesn't boast. He doesn't say, look what I did. Instead, he says, the Lord stood by me and gave me strength. Paul knows what the Pharisee never learned, that holiness isn't about self-reliance. It's about total dependence on God. The Catechism says it beautifully in one of its sections. It says, humility is the foundation of prayer, for we do not pray unless we acknowledge that we do not make ourselves. That's what true prayer looks like. Not performance, but relationship. So my friends, when we come to this altar today, we don't come to show off how holy we are. We come to admit how much we need God's mercy. And so we come to say again that ancient saving prayer. Oh God, be merciful to me, a sinner. If that's our prayer, honest, humble, born of love, then Jesus' promise is ours too. We will go home justified.